They came without warning. No radio static, no first contact protocol. Nothing. One moment the sky above Earth was ordinary, and the next, 40,000 ships bloomed out of nothing like a rash spreading across the dark. 40,000. Not a fleet. An armada. And every single one of them was pointed at us. I need you to understand something before I go any further. Humanity had been alone for so long that we'd stopped believing in the possibility of company. We built telescopes, we sent probes, we whispered into the void for 100 years, and nothing answered. So when the sky finally cracked open, nobody was ready. Nobody could be ready. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. Earth didn't panic. Earth didn't fold. Earth folded space around them instead. Let me back up, because you need to see this the way we saw it, hour by hour, breath by breath. It started on a Tuesday. I remember that detail because it felt so wrong, an alien invasion showing up on the most boring day of the week. Sarah Chun was the one who noticed first. She was a junior analyst at the Deep Space Monitoring Array in Nevada, 26 years old, 3 years out of grad school, and she'd pulled the night shift because nobody senior wanted it. At 3:14 in the morning, her gravitational sensors screamed. Not beeped. Screamed. The kind of alarm that isn't supposed to trigger in a human lifetime, the kind engineers build in as a joke. A "this will never happen" failsafe. Sarah stared at the readout for 4 full seconds before her brain accepted what her eyes were telling her. Something massive had just entered the solar system. Not gradually. Instantly. She hit the emergency line. Within 11 minutes, every major space agency on Earth had the data. Within 30, the president was awake. Within an hour, so was every head of state on the planet, because the ships weren't slowing down. Now here's where it gets strange, and I promise you it only gets stranger from here. The Armada didn't come in through the outer solar system like you'd expect from anything obeying the laws of physics we understood. They appeared in a ring around Earth's orbit, evenly spaced, like beads on a necklace that had simply materialized around our planet's neck. 40,000 ships, each one roughly the size of a small moon. And they weren't moving. They were just watching. Sarah told me later, when I interviewed her for this story, that the silence was the worst part. No demands. No greetings. Just an armada the size of a small solar system's worth of matter sitting in perfect formation around Earth, patient as a held breath. For 6 hours, humanity didn't know if this was the last day. Military command scrambled everything we had. Every nuclear power brought their arsenals to readiness. Every satellite was repurposed for observation. And every scientist who had ever theorized about alien contact was suddenly on a call with the White House Situation Room, trying to answer a question none of them had ever expected to actually need an answer to. What do they want? But you know what's coming next, don't you? You know this isn't the part where Earth loses. Stay with me, because the next 12 hours are the part of this story that changed everything we thought we knew about ourselves. At the Geneva Institute for Theoretical Physics, there was a woman named Dr. Amara Osei who had spent the last 15 years of her career being quietly mocked by her peers. Her research was on something called recursive spatial folding, a theory so far outside mainstream physics that most journals wouldn't even review her papers anymore. She believed that space itself could be treated less like a fixed stage and more like fabric that could be gathered, pinched, and folded by anything with sufficient understanding of its underlying structure. Nobody funded her. Nobody believed her. Until the morning the sky filled with ships and every single government on Earth started calling anyone with a theory, any theory, because conventional physics had nothing to offer against an armada that had appeared out of nowhere. Amara picked up her phone at 9 a.m. Geneva time. It was a general from NATO's newly activated Extraterrestrial Contingency Division, a division that had existed on paper for decades and had never once been staffed with more than 3 people. He asked her one question: "Can we fight back with what we have?" She said no. Absolutely not. Not with missiles, not with lasers, not with anything built on the physics we currently understood. Then he asked the question that mattered. Is there anything else? And this is the moment the entire trajectory of the story bends. Because Amara said yes. Here's what she meant, and I'll try to keep this simple even though the mathematics behind it are anything but. Her theory suggested that if you understood the topology of space precisely enough, you didn't need to travel through it the way conventional ships did. You could fold the space itself, bringing two distant points together, or in this case, bringing a region of space around a target rather than moving a ship toward it. In plain terms, instead of Earth defending itself in the space where it currently existed, what if Earth scientists could fold the space around the Armada instead, trapping every single one of those 40,000 ships inside a pocket of space that Earth controlled? It sounded insane. It sounded like the kind of idea that gets you laughed out of a room. But humanity didn't have the luxury of laughing anymore. The next 18 hours were the most intense scientific mobilization in human history. Every particle accelerator on the planet was repurposed. Every supercomputer cluster, from Oak Ridge to Tokyo to the servers buried under CERN, was networked together into a single processing entity larger than anything ever built before. Amara Osei, a woman who had been on the verge of losing her research funding 48 hours earlier, was now standing in a command center giving orders to physicists twice her seniority, because she was the only person on the planet who understood the mathematics well enough to guide them. And still, the Armada waited above us, watching, silent. I want you to sit with that silence for a second, because it's the detail that haunted every single person who lived through those hours. An Armada capable of annihilating a planet, and it just sat there, watching. Some analysts believed it was a psychological tactic, designed to let fear do the work before a single shot was fired. Others believed the aliens were studying us, gathering data before deciding our fate. Nobody knew, and not knowing is its own kind of torture. At the 17-hour mark, something happened that nearly ended everything before Amara's plan was ready. One of the smaller scout ships, roughly the size of an aircraft carrier, detached from the main formation and began descending toward Earth's atmosphere. Every defense system on the planet went to maximum alert. Fighter jets scrambled. Naval fleets repositioned. The world held its breath, waiting to see if this was the first strike. It wasn't. The scout ship stopped at the edge of the atmosphere and simply hovered there, sending no signal, taking no action, just hanging above the Pacific Ocean like a held threat that refused to resolve itself either way. Later, we would learn this was likely a test. The aliens were probing our reaction time, our defense posture, gathering intelligence on how quickly and how aggressively humanity would respond to provocation. We passed the test by not firing first. But it cost us nearly an hour of panic, an hour Amara's team desperately needed. By hour 20, the math was ready, or as ready as it was ever going to be. Here's the part of this story that I think about the most, the part that still gives me chills even now, months later, writing this down for you. Amara's plan didn't involve a single weapon. Not one missile, not one laser, not one explosive device. It involved bending space itself. The theory worked like this. If Earth's combined computing power could model the exact gravitational signature of all 40,000 alien vessels simultaneously, and if the accelerators could generate a coordinated field precise enough, humanity could fold the region of space containing the entire Armada into a pocket dimension, a fold in the fabric of space that would separate them from our solar system entirely. Not destroy them, not kill them, just remove them cleanly from our part of the universe. It was elegant. It was also completely unprecedented, and nobody, including Amara, could guarantee it would work. At hour 22, the Armada began moving, not attacking, repositioning. The ships that had been spread in a wide ring around Earth's orbit began tightening their formation, drawing closer to the planet, closer to each other. Analysts at the Pentagon believed this was preparation for an assault. Amara believed something different. She believed the aliens had detected the buildup of energy from Earth's coordinated accelerators and were reacting defensively, trying to consolidate before whatever Earth was building could be deployed. Either way, the message was clear. Time had just run out. At hour 23, with the Armada now less than half its original distance from Earth's surface, Amara gave the order. I've spoken to 3 of the engineers who were in that control room. All 3 of them described the same thing. A low hum that built steadily across every speaker in the building. A hum that seemed to come not from the machines but from the air itself, as if space had started vibrating in protest. The lights across half of Europe flickered as the accelerator network drew more power than any system had ever pulled at once. In Tokyo, in Oak Ridge, in a dozen labs around the world, screens filled with equations cascading faster than any human eye could follow, the combined processing power of humanity's best machines racing to model and execute a fold in spacetime that had never been attempted, not even in theory, not even on paper until 3 days earlier. And then, for exactly 4 seconds, the world went completely silent. I mean that literally. Every recording device, every sensor, every satellite feed from that 4-second window shows nothing. No signal. No static. Just silence. As if the universe itself had held its breath alongside us. When the silence broke, the sky was empty. 40,000 ships. Gone. Not destroyed. Not exploded. Not scattered across the void as debris. Simply gone, as if they had never been there at all. Sarah Chun, the analyst who first detected the Armada, was also the one who confirmed their disappearance. She told me that when she saw her sensors return to baseline, she didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She just sat there in stunned silence for almost a full minute, unable to process that the thing that had nearly ended human civilization had simply ceased to exist in our part of space. But here's the detail that matters most, the one that I think you need to hear before this story ends. The Armada wasn't destroyed. Amara was clear about that from the very first debrief. They were folded into a pocket of space, a region that Earth scientists could theoretically reopen, but chose not to. We didn't kill them. We simply removed the threat, cleanly, without a single casualty on either side. In the weeks that followed, the world changed in ways that are still unfolding even as I write this. Amara Osei went from a mocked academic outsider to the single most important scientist on the planet practically overnight. Her theories, once dismissed as fringe science, are now the foundation of an entirely new field, one that governments around the world are pouring unprecedented resources into. Sarah Chun was offered a position at the newly formed Global Deep Space Threat Assessment Bureau, an organization that didn't exist before that Tuesday and now employs over 12,000 people worldwide. And humanity, for the first time in its history, had to reckon with the fact that we are not alone in this universe, and that whatever civilization sent that armada is still out there, somewhere in whatever fold of space we place them, waiting. Nobody knows if they'll come back. Nobody knows if there are other fleets, other armadas, other civilizations watching us right now, deciding whether we're a threat worth engaging or a curiosity worth ignoring. What we do know is this. When humanity was surrounded, when we were staring down odds that should have ended everything, we didn't reach for our weapons first. We reached for understanding. We took a theory that had been laughed out of every major journal on the planet and turned it into the reason we're still here today. I think about that a lot, honestly. I think about how close we came to responding with force, how close the Pentagon was to authorizing a full nuclear response before Amara's team finished their calculations. I think about how different this story would have ended if humanity had chosen fear over patience, weapons over mathematics. We got lucky, but we also got it right in the way that mattered most. The Armada is gone now, folded away in whatever pocket of space Amara's team created for them. Some scientists believe that fold is permanent. Others believe it's only a matter of time before either we or they find a way to reopen it. Either way, Earth is different now. We know we're not alone. We know that somewhere out there, an entire civilization built 40,000 ships and sent them straight at us without a single word of explanation. And we know that, when they did, humanity didn't fold. We made the universe fold instead. If you made it this far, I want you to sit with that for a second. Because the scariest part of this whole story isn't the Armada. It's not the silence, or the 6 hours of not knowing, or the scout ship hovering above the Pacific like a held threat. The scariest part is this. If Amara Osei hadn't spent 15 years being mocked for a theory nobody believed in, if she had given up like everyone told her to, none of us would be here right now. Sometimes the thing that saves everyone is the idea everyone else already dismissed. And somewhere out there, past whatever fold in space now holds that silent armada, another civilization is asking themselves the same question we are. What happens next? Let me tell you a few things that never made it into the official press briefings because I think you deserve the full picture, not just the version that made it onto the evening news. During those 23 hours, 3 separate countries came dangerously close to launching independent strikes against the Armada without coordinating with anyone else. 2 were talked down by their own military advisors. The third was only stopped when Amara's team threatened to pull their computing resources from the joint effort entirely. I know that sounds almost unbelievable, nations maneuvering against each other while facing a potential extinction event. But that's the truth of it. Even staring down the end of everything, we were still human, still flawed, still capable of nearly ruining our own rescue out of pride. There's another detail that didn't make the headlines, one that Sarah Chun told me herself, off the record. In the final hour before the fold, her station picked up a strange pulse coming from the Armada, rhythmic, almost musical. Not a weapon signature. Nobody has explained it. Amara thinks it might have been something closer to a question than a threat. We'll probably never know. And honestly, that unresolved mystery unsettles me more than the ships ever did. The possibility that in the last moments before we folded them away, they were trying to say something, and we closed the door before we could find out what. After the fold, the world didn't just change scientifically. It changed socially, politically, in ways that are still rippling outward even now. Within a month, the United Nations had formed an entirely new body, the Global Coalition for Extraterrestrial Affairs, tasked with coordinating any future contact scenario. For the first time in decades, nations that hadn't cooperated meaningfully on anything were suddenly sharing satellite data, research funding, even military intelligence. All because the one thing that terrifies people more than each other is the unknown. Amara Osei's institute in Geneva went from a staff of 11 to a staff of over 400 in less than 6 months. Governments that had ignored her funding requests for over a decade were now begging her to accept grants worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She told me once, in an interview I did with her almost a year after the event, that the whole thing felt less like vindication and more like grief. She had spent 15 years being told her work was worthless, and now it was the only thing standing between humanity and extinction, and there was no way to get those 15 years back. No way to undo the isolation, the rejection, the nights she spent doubting herself. I think that's a part of this story people forget. We love to talk about the moment